Hey, this is Matt with St. Bonaventure University Cyber 503, week 7, lab 1. Initially, I just did my documentation for this lab, and then I noticed everybody else did videos, so I am going to add a video as well. It didn't seem like it was necessary, but here we go. In this lab, we have the history from a compromised machine. The history is given here. And we're going to do the following. We're identifying the incident and then documenting the system messages and the events to identify any malicious activity, where we should collect the data from, initial triage, risk assessment, and the need to escalate the incident. So looking at the incident history, I'm going to dump over to my report that I created here. I condensed it a little bit. Now, looking at the first several things here, we have a who am I ID and the uname-a. As a penetration tester and hacker myself, these are things that you're going to run as soon as you've compromised a system, right? So you've compromised a system, you want to know what level of access you have, who you're logged on as, and other information for that particular system. You may not even have a shell account at this point. You may have a command execution vulnerability in an application or something like that, and it's spitting back data to you through a web portal or something. So as you can see here, I ran this kind of on my Kali box, just what it would be in the command prompt to show you that it tells you your username. It gives you whether your access level, and tells you the system that you're on. In this case, it's Kali, but it could be Ubuntu, CentOS. Gives you details. These are things that, like I said, you don't even need a shell account or access to the box. They could be run through an application using command injection or something like that. Then you'll see that the next thing that was run was NC for Netcat. Given the system that may or may not be installed on there, right? If it was installed, this would have dropped to command prompt in Netcat, and you would not have the information of anything that was entered. We're going to assume that this wasn't, because it looks like in the next several steps something was brought from another machine. It looks potentially on the same network, so potentially another compromised machine on the network. We brought in this tar file, and it looks like they've extracted it and then moved it to init. So it looks like, and it's called NC. So it looks like it brought the Netcat program over to this machine. We're not sure. It could be something else. It could be malware or a rootkit or a backdoor disguised as Netcat, right? But based on the following, it looks like whatever it is that was brought in, they're creating a port on 440 to run. And going a little further down, we see that similar to something we did in the previous lab using Netcat, sending data to the attached the network port. So we've got this network connection here where maybe on another machine, potentially this Dan at 192.168.3.25, right? Potentially from there, or the original compromised machine is doing basically a credential compromise. We've got the Etsy password and Etsy shadow being transmitted to another machine via Netcat, right? And then you have kind of a this here we see that the varlog messages has been edited, or at least opened in an editor, is likely edited to remove any trace of what was done, so that the messages themselves would not be, at least on this system, usable in forensics. We would hope that SIM was in place um, to capture any logs, elsewise. So beyond that, we're evaluating the system messages. Like I said, that systems of our log messages will be unreliable, but we can also look at application messages, intrusion detection systems logs, network and firewall logs, and the cat jumped on my lap, decided to help. Uh, and then basically, if you especially query on port 4040 to reveal connection activity from any attacking system to victim systems, trying to determine a map of attack here to see what systems may potentially be breached, right? So data collection sources, we've already identified 3 systems where we were going to want data logs from any IDS, any SIM that may be running. Another one I thought of possibly is if these systems exist within a physical space, have a badge access to that physical space in the event, or even play logs or clocks, punch clocks to see if anybody may have been on or in the vicinity of these machines, if they were physical or virtual. The reason for that is I think you need to be able to, in any system, you need to be eliminate insider threat or any incident. So for initial triage, we're going to want forensic images, memory dumps, collect the system states at the beginning of initial triage, right? We need to have our forensics, and you want to do that before you start, if possible. I mean, obviously, if there's an active attack, you want to mitigate that as quickly as possible, but you also want to be able to research it. So it's kind of push and pull there. You want to be able to at least get some memory dumps, images if possible, of any affected machines without risking further infection or attack, right? So that's what we would be doing there. We could, instead of taking the system offline, here's one of the other things I thought about in this particular case. Since it seems like the attacker is knowledgeable, has access, it's got multiple systems, we've got something floating around. It could be Netcat, but it could be malware, right? We should quietly restrict connectivity. We don't want to, if there's an active attack, we don't want to alert this attacker at this point that we've identified the attack is ongoing, right? So we want to maybe just make it look as things like starting to go offline, start isolating, because in this case, whether it was an active attacker or if it was an application, I would be concerned basically because of the erasure of data in the messages, far-log messages. This is something that I would do as a black hat myself. Is if I'm discovered or post-compromise drop malware like ransomware or a logic bomb, right? Once you've been in, you've gotten the data you've wanted, etc., you destroy the system so that everything is erased. So we need to make sure that we've isolated and the attack or malware that's automation that might be doing this, and make sure that it's not anywhere else. We want to identify all the locations as we close the net around the incident, right? And I'm going to assess this as a critical, right? Indicator of multiple compromised systems, lateral movement, credential compromise, privilege escalation. It's all there. This is, somebody with some serious access already. Potential for widespread compromise exists, and we still don't know the initial compromise vector, right? So that needs to be identified and mitigated, and we cannot rule out an insider threat. So yes, this incident definitely would need to be escalated. I would bring in, if a small SOC, definitely you need a third party that can come in with some big guns, or if you've got the ability, you need to really do a forensic investigation and scour this entire network and probably look into, I'm feeling on this one, look into an insider threat. So there you have it. That is lab 1 for week 7. This has been Cyber 503. Matt Sudol. Thank you, and